Good morning. Welcome to the Brew. I'm your host, Lex, and you know what Friday means. We're going to visit with Paulina today and Molly. This is going to be fun. We are going to talk about the war in Israel and what sort of impacts that might have on the market going forward. So let's get right to it and bring the ladies on. Good morning, ladies. How are you?
Hey, you guys.
Hi. Hi, Paulina.
Hey, Lex. Hey, Molly. How's it going?
Good.
Great.
Yep. Always good. Always good. So we're going to talk about the war, huh, Paulina? I'm afraid.
Yes.
I am too.
Are you afraid too?
I am too. We had technical difficulties on the way in, and that might be serendipitous. So a little nervous.
Well, let's let Paulina talk about it. If we're both afraid. She doesn't look like she's afraid.
You're brave.
Well, I feel like it's an inevitable conversation that we have to have, right? I mean, it's on everyone's minds. It's all over the news. And I think there are a lot of questions on top of investors and traders' minds as to how to approach, trading and investing during this, event.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, how this war between, right now it's Israel and Hamas. Who knows where it goes? What's the most obvious impact that this war could have on the global economy, do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to say, obviously, the utmost and main concern is the cost of human life, and that's obviously should be top of mind for everyone. And my heart goes out to the people that have been impacted by this tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to the global economy, the oil market is the primary issue, especially if this conflict broadens out to other parts of the Middle East and beyond. But I think we can better understand the dynamics of this war if we take a look at the different players. So let's start with Israel. So Israel is not a big oil producer, but investors are concerned that if this war escalates and other neighboring oil producing countries get pulled into the conflict, the question is, what does that mean for oil? We saw that WTI crude, the benchmark for oil, that was up 6% just last week, right after Hamas's invasion occurred. To start this week, however, WTI prices are actually holding pretty steady, as there's still geopolitical risk, though, as it relates to oil prices going higher. So let's take this a step further. What does this mean, for us here in the U.S.? Well, higher oil prices are a concern here because that could impact things like consumer spending. It could impact things like higher overall prices in the economy, particularly inflation. So, that in turn could pose a threat to the Federal Reserve, because the Fed has been working really hard to pull down inflation to its 2% target by higher interest rates. So, while oil, the higher prices in oil are a short-term issue, at least for now, but I think it's important to kind of understand what the potential ripple effects are as this war, continues.
Yeah. So you mentioned WTI crude, right? Is that
yes?
So that was up 6% last week. So is it possible that product could be a leading indicator of what's going on over here, meaning how bad it could get? So it seems like those people closest to that market, the oil market, their ears on the ground about all this stuff. So if that starts rising and getting crazy out of hand, maybe that's sort of a leading indicator of how entangled we're getting over there. Or not we, but it's getting. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the, I think it was one of the ministers in the cabinet in Iran, he said that he sees the price per barrel of oil going as high as $100 per barrel. And, if we continue talking about some of the regional players there, Iran is another one. Iran is one of the world's largest oil producers. And, the U.S. could sanction Iran oil exports if Iran were to be, kind of dragged into this conflict. That would, as a result, reduce its oil supply, and that could push oil prices even higher because the supply is already pretty tight. You also have Saudi Arabia as a player here. And President Biden has been trying to broker peace between Saudi Arabia and Israel, but those efforts appear to be kind of dwindling every day as this new conflict kind of continues. But as part of that deal, to secure a deal, Saudi Arabia was willing to boost its oil production. And obviously all of that is put into question now with this war.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. So the players here are, so you have Hamas and Israel, right? That the main nucleus of the conflict. Then you have, to the north of Israel is where Hezbollah is, I believe, right? So we can't take them out of the equation to make this go even escalate further, right? And then you have Iran, Iraq, I'm assuming, are on the Hamas side of the equation. Who's the ally of Israel besides us? Is Qatar in this at all? Because I read something today that, they're friendly with the America, but they kind of play a little close game with, the Hamas and Hezbollah folks. They have to deal with them as well. So, this to me has the potential to be bigger than we think. I think. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think unfortunately this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm hoping that the violence stops, but I'm not, an expert on Middle Eastern politics,
Right.
but I know that there's a lot of tensions in the region. And I think the main priority in terms of foreign relations is try to figure out how to kind of quell the situation. But I'm not really sure if we're going to see that anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Ma, what do you think? Are you deep into this one or no? Molly's feeling a little bit under the weather today, right?
Right. I'm under the California sunny weather.
Oh, okay.
But I will say that I think it's important to look at this from a challenge to the dollar. So if you span out and look at OPEC being traded on the dollar and the talks of CBDC coming into play with the gold backs, with BRICS and whatnot, it's important to not only look at the history as a whole, but you also want to look at what's the monetary, a lot of times there's a lot of money that goes into war machines, and it's really important to understand that component because they are driving forces. And so when this occurred, we want to look at what the BIS, so the Bank of International Settlements, is, if there's a lot of noise happening here, always take a look at what they're doing over there. And just recently, they announced Project Mariana, and it's on the road to leapfrogging the cross the territorial lines between countries and transferring money, which is what gives some of the dollar its power. And not to mention, anyway, we want to make sure that we keep an eye on that. And so how do you think this affects the stronghold of the dollar in OPEC, and especially with Russia banning diesel? Do you feel like there's an effect that it could have on that?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure how it could impact the dollar. I will say that, but I think that there's a missed opportunity as it relates to oil production in the U.S. And the U.S. is the world's largest producer of oil and gas, and American energy companies can actually produce more oil whenever they want. But American companies aren't producing more oil because that would increase the supply, and basic economics kind of tells us that if there's more supply and demand is steady, or there's not as much demand, prices come down. and that impacts how much oil that these energy companies in the US can produce. So if they produce more or less, that would impact their profits, and they wouldn't be able to kind of make as much money and then in effect distribute those profits as dividends to investors. So I kind of think of the US as kind of not a player, but how this whole situation kind of impacts US business in terms of how it impacts the energy sector here in the US.
Mm-hmm. So we could, technically we could just produce more oil if we're that much of a player in that market, which I know we are. Although it's a little bit villainized by the current administration, right? The whole oil production and fossil fuel usage. So whatever that means, but they don't want us to produce oil, right? Even though we have so much of it. So that's a problem in and of itself. I wonder if that takes some of the breaking off of U.S. oil production, this particular conflict. I don't know. Hard to say. I just want my gas-powered oven. That's all I can say. I swear, I don't want electric. I can't cook on electric.
Right.
Yeah. So what are you bearish, bullish on this, Paulina? What are you thinking? It's too early to tell. It seems like I was surprised the market was up so much today. At least pre the opening. I think it's still up pretty good. Only because of what we learned over the weekend relative to this war, I guess it is. So, how do you feel? Are you super bearish, bullish, or not? Too early to tell.
Well, I think it's important to kind of look at how the markets responded as, right after this event occurred. So there really hasn't been much impact on the markets following the invasion. Monday, right after the violence broke out, markets opened lower because there obviously was uncertainty, but then they recovered by the end of the day. So I think that's partly because investors may think, this conflict has historically been going on for many, many years now, and this war is probably unlikely to end anytime soon. And something similar happened last year when Russia invaded Ukraine. There was initial uncertainty, but then, unfortunately, fortunately or fortunately, the Mars kind of brushed it off. At the same time, there's still uncertainty when it comes to war. But when looking at geopolitical events historically, stocks tend to hold up pretty well, and they have a swift recovery if they decline as a result of geopolitical uncertainty. But more broadly, markets have been pretty volatile, and I think that's because of treasury yields going higher. Investors are thinking, why should I invest in risky stocks when I can get a 5% on yield with little risk? So that means investors could potentially keep putting money in treasuries and money market funds. But as I alluded to earlier, I think the conflict seemed to have impacted investor expectations on where the Fed could take interest rates. Right before there's a big Fed meeting, I like to look at the Fed watch tool, the CME Fed watch tool. That kind of gives you a gauge as to what investors are thinking about in terms of, is the Fed going to, raise rates, keep them steady? So I looked at that, and it said that the market is now pricing in a 90% probability that the Fed is going to keep rates steady at its next policy meeting on November 1st. So that's kind of the read on the situation as it relates to the markets. So, we'll obviously see what happens in the beginning of next month.
Yeah, but do you have a feeling on are wars and these sort of things, are they tend to push interest rates higher generally? Is that necessarily true or not? Or is it hard to say?
So I'm not really sure historically how interest rates are impacted by wars, but I think the main focus for the Federal Reserve is bringing inflation down to its target.
Sure.
It has made a lot of progress in the past year, but as of now, it seems like the Fed could keep rates steady. So that's what the read is as of now. That could certainly change, but we're not really sure.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
What other types of companies could be affected by this? That are directly involved, I should say.
Right.
Yeah,
Paulina, what do you see on your end?
Well, right after the invasion occurred, we did see an increase in defense stocks go up a bit.
Mhm.
That's a natural kind of reaction, in war, these companies that manufacture, weapons and stuff like that, that's expected, they're expected to increase because they sell and produce those products. So that's the only thing that comes to mind immediately. I'm not sure exactly, companies that are doing business there, and if they have to like pull away for safety
Right.
reasons or for other reasons.
So that would be
Yeah, I'm not
Boeing,
sure.
Lockheed, and Raytheon, or the top three. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So if, let's say, if the people don't want war, can we short those? I mean, is that dangerous to even say? Is that bad? Am I gonna? This
Yeah,
is the
you
end
can't
of
say
me.
that. You can't say that.
Can I not say that?
Yeah, you could say it. You could say whatever you want.
But I mean, that the sky is the limit. So if you really take the burden of responsibility of understanding this war and studying the history, which is totally at your disposal on this
Mhm.
thing, then you can then make actual decisions to really affect what's happening over there,
Mhm. Yep.
pro or against.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
sure I'd take a position.
I really don't. This thing goes back 3,000 years.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think we can really
I think,
understand
yeah, I
the
also think
Temple
the risk,
Mount.
right? I think the risk is that right now it's contained, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. But the risk is it gets, the cattle start getting out of the corral here, and all of a sudden it spreads elsewhere. Someone takes a shot, from another angle at Israel. Then all of
Yeah.
a sudden, the worst thing here is the US has to get involved.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about real escalation. I mean, truly involved,
Yeah.
where we have to send people. That's the real, I think the very outlier risk, but that's the scary part of this, right? We're talking the Middle East here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the Middle East that don't like us at all, as well,
Right.
including the
Yeah.
Israelis. So that to me is something I got to believe we're very careful about, or not getting to that level.
Right.
All right. Well, Paulina, thanks for that. I'm gonna, I'm watching this a good bit. I will say that. And I'm starting to trying to educate myself on the history here, and who's who and what's what. So it's I've done a lot of reading, but this is a tough one. I agree with you. This is a tough one to call, I think, but we'll definitely be watching that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of play here historically, a lot of
Yep.
players, and just a lot of moving parts. So as we kind of said last week, if you have your own trading and investing strategy, I think that's gonna be the best way to weather this storm.
Mhm.
And so I'll just echo that again today.
No, I appreciate it. All right, Ma, we got to let Paulina go. She's got to go. So
All
say
right.
goodbye.
Thanks for your patience with me today, you guys.
Yeah,
It
we
was
had a
so
little
nice.
pre-show issue, but we got through it. So, Paulina, thanks for coming on. You have a great weekend. And we'll see you next Friday with some more great
Yep.
topics, okay?
Yep. Thanks for
All right.
having me. See you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Oh, we're in small mode.
Hey, hi there.
How are you? No, I'm so delicately dancing around this issue because you can imagine how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Just knowing me a little bit,
Right.
yeah. So I'm trying not to say anything. I'm trying to be politically in the center.
Absolutely. And I don't think, I think that is also, I think it's also, I wish it weren't so, where we could say what we wanted to say,
Well,
and that we were.
I might. I mean, you never know. I might say what I want to say.
Right.
Just not going to today because I got to go. All right. Well, that was fun. I'll catch up with you later because I have to go to another thing.
And let's just reiterate, we wish everyone protective
Safety.
nights
Yes.
and
That's
safety, and we hope the best, and we're thinking of you guys over there.
For sure. All right, Ma, you get better. Get some rest this weekend, and
All right.
drink the tea with the lemon in it or something.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Lex.
It's a wrap. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.